Our offices next to each other.
I apologize for running a little bit late. The roads are windy up here, but you all know that. And appreciate your patience. We're here to gather to talk about what is the deadliest drug epidemic in America, the opioid crisis. In North Carolina, we've lost over 20,000 lives to this wave, and tragically, it is raging worse than ever today because of COVID. All that isolation, anxiety, depression, job loss, all those things that we saw in our daily lives, those are the same factors that drive drug use and addiction. And so, more people dying than ever before. I think that numbers of drug overdose from 2019 to 2020 statewide increased 40%. 40% in 1 year. And that was to 2020. We think 2021 was worse. It's just that data isn't in yet. And when you look at sort of the 5 most western counties, including Graham, there have been, in 2020, so last year we have full data, there were 27 deaths and over 100 emergency department visits for people who have experienced a drug overdose. So it's just devastating lives. It's affecting families, and of course, it's affecting communities and the work that all of you do. How did we get here? Very simply, greed. These drug companies made billions and billions of dollars while millions of Americans got hooked on the pills. So I led a national bipartisan coalition of attorneys general, pretty much every single one in the entire United States, to take Purdue Pharma, the Sackler family, and all these companies to court. And we're winning. We've won more than $26 billion so far, and there's more that's going to come down the pipe. And when you look at the $26 billion, it comes from the 3 drug distributors and Johnson & Johnson, which manufactured a generic opioid. The North Carolina share of that $26 billion is $750 million. And almost all that $26 billion, by the way, is going to go to attack the crisis. And here in North Carolina, the $750 million is going to go to attack the crisis. What we decided to do in negotiation with the county commission, and Becky was an integral member of it. There was a committee from the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners called the 555 Committee. It was 5 county managers, 5 county attorneys, and 5 county commissioners. And those folks negotiated with the lawyers in my office a memorandum of agreement that allocated how the money was going to be spent. It governed the money, how much was going to go where, what it could be used for, and really importantly, transparency requirements so that the public knows everything that's going on. So of that $750 million, we decided to put almost the vast majority of it, 85%, back to the counties because you all are the ones who deal with this crisis at the local level. It's human services, it's social services, it's criminal justice. Y'all are the ones, EMS, who have to see the consequence of an overdose and deal with it. So 85% is going to go to the counties, 15% is going to go to the state, but regardless of what level of government it is, it will go to attack the problem. So when we look at these 5 most western counties, it's going to total about $12.5 million over the term of the deal. And we break out all 100 counties, not only Graham County, but Cherokee, Swaim, Clay, Macon, all the counties. If you go to this website, ncopioidsettlement.org, it gives the cash flow to each county over time so that you all, the county managers, y'all can budget this and make recommendations to your county commissioners and say, well, this year we got 120,000, next year we're going to get 80,000, maybe we should do this year and that next year because we don't have as much money. But it also really is about trying to encourage regional cooperation because when you break down, like Graham's share is 1.1 million, but the region share is 12.5 million. So if there are things that you all can invest in together to serve the broader community, then you can stretch those dollars and make it have a bigger impact. So the permitted kinds of activities are prevention, treatment, recovery services, and harm reduction. Any of those types of initiatives are permitted by the settlement agreement. So specifically, that can include naloxone distribution, treatment for people who need medication-assisted therapy, post-overdose response teams with your EMS to go interact with people after they've had their overdose to try to connect them to treatment facilities, syringe service programs, criminal justice diversion for law enforcement, so that if you have somebody who's a user, instead of necessarily arresting them and bringing them into the courthouse, maybe you connect them to a treatment facility where they can deal with what's underlying the addiction, get them out of the criminal justice system, get them into the healthcare system, and then they get treated and well. Recovery housing and support services, detox and treatment facilities, recovery, like I said, recovery employment stuff, so job assistance. And what I hope, when I kind of hand the mic over and come sit with you all around the table, I've heard about your community linkage care programs, where you try to have sort of wraparound to help people with post-release assistance, whether it's job assistance or housing assistance. I just like to learn more about what you all have been doing in that regard. And I also want to underscore something that's also unique about North Carolina. And I was just at an association, the National Association of Attorneys General met, and I was on the panel bragging on this MOA that you helped to negotiate. The whole country is really envious of what we've got here in North Carolina. No state in the country has anything like the website we have, ncopioidsettlement.org. Another thing that we've done that's unique is we've been partnering with these foundations that have been making planning grants to counties. And Dogwood Health Trust has been really at the forefront of this. I think they made nearly $2.5 million in grants to 8 different entities. And if you all have gotten one of those grants, I'd be very anxious to hear how it has worked for you. So a lot going on and a lot more to come in the months and years ahead. The first payment from those companies was made to the settlement administrator last month. So we think the first payment will come to the counties sometime in the next 2 months. Then there are payments 2, 3, and 4 that come in quick succession in July. So we think in July, August, September, you'll get payments 2, 3, and 4. So the cash is going to start flowing relatively soon. So it's really important that you all do the work to prioritize about how you want to fund, what you want to fund, and what strategies. And from the transparency perspective, this website that I talked about, we're going to have a dashboard that has every county in the state and every expenditure they made as it relates to these funds, because they're in a dedicated reserve account. They're not going to be in the general fund. And we're going to know how what decision every county made, and then what were the outcomes of that investment? Did we distribute naloxone? Did we have people go through the treatment process? How many people went through the detox facility? Which ones delivered and which ones didn't? So that 4 years from now, if you haven't been satisfied with the programs you've invested in, but Haywood County has got something going on that's really working, you can call up Haywood and say, hey, share the knowledge. Just the same way that if you all have stuff that's working the neighboring counties don't have, you can share the knowledge. Because what we want is for this money to matter. I mean, we wanted to punish the companies. We wanted to make them feel pain. And $26 billion is a lot of pain. It's the second biggest state AG settlement in the history of the country. So that serves an end to punish them for what they did. But we want this money to transform lives. We want people to get healthy so that they can be happy, they can be loving with their family, they can contribute to their communities. And what I do know, what I'm certain of, is that once we have made the investments, you all have made the investments with these funds, is that there will be people alive next year and the year after who are happy and healthy, who otherwise wouldn't be here. And that's fundamentally what we're all about with this work. So thank you, and at this point, I'd really be interested to hear from you all about what kind of programs you have operating today, what are some of the programs you're considering to use this money to invest, And if you have any grants from the foundations, if you have regional partnerships you're working on, just anything that could help inform me as I travel the state and meet with other leaders, I would appreciate that. And Mitch, I don't know if you want to go first or how you want to, Mr. Manager.
Well, first, I'd like to thank you and your team for being here today. We're going to talk a little bit. We'll let Clinton talk briefly about Bailey. He's here. He'll probably talk some, and then talk a little bit. He had some information.
Good. Just a little space.
Sorry about that. But we're excited about what we've seen in our eyes, the success that this has brought to our county and our community. Somebody here knows, has either been affected by, or a family member has been affected by what's happening all across the state and the country. So it's hit close to home, and that's why I'm doing my best as a county manager to influence these programs and also trying to hire those. We have some success stories that we've put to work at the county level to give them jobs to help them
when they get out of the program.
That's right.
That's awesome.
So
that's awesome.
From that, I'd like to, Clayton, you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
So I run the CLC and the LED program law enforcement program. Working with the Sheriff's Department, we're getting that up and going. Basically what I do is...
Are you a deputy, or are you a county employee, or are you a nonprofit employee?
I work for the health department.
Health department.
As a pure perspective.
Okay.
So basically what I do is I'll give them either the jail, or while they're on probation, or DSS, will refer them to me. And then basically just connect them to the resources that I am able to connect them with. We fall a little short on the housing part of it, because it's a big issue here as far as having somewhere for them to go, and not being able to get them into a place where it gets them out of the environment that they're in. It's kind of hard for them to make that change. But despite that, we've had some successes with it.
The treatment that you connect people to, is it all outpatient, or is there any inpatient?
Some of the inpatients, like we have like ADAC, Folsom. There's a new place that I'm just now starting to work with. It's a Recovery Careers in Buncombe. They will take some of the inmates that get out of jail and just come get them, take them straight from jail, and put them into it's a work first place. I guess they put them into community housing or like a sober living thing, and then they help them get into job trainings and stuff like that. It kind of gets them out of here.
That's great.
And it gives them a better start. We started the work with Tri-County, got a GED program with the inmates at the jail. So we're working on that. Got it started a few weeks ago. It's going really well.
Is that internet based? How do they do it?
Right now I'm using the courtroom to do the classes, and we just bought a smart TV to put in to be able to stream the classes into the jail.
So they're live taught at the community college?
Yeah, well, we do it at the courthouse. So whatever days they don't have court, I get to go up there, and we have a lady that comes from Tri-County and comes over and does the testing and all that stuff. So
that's awesome.
That's pretty much about it. And other than that, it's just a support system.
Are you the only pure sport specialist?
It's me and Bethany Leonard that does what I do. So we're there for, the word got out, and we're able to help quite a few people. So it's good just to have somebody there that they can talk to and relate to. As somebody that's been through what they've been through, it's just why we do it.
That's very rewarding.
It is.
Do you want to share your success story about the person your sentence was reduced?
Yeah, we managed to get a sentence reduced here a while back. We had everybody work together on that. It's the DA, everybody just kind of pieced in on that, and then went from getting sent off for 18 months to 2-year probation.
Was it a drug crime or a property crime related
I don't remember what the charges was on it, but I don't really remember exactly what the charges was.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I met this guy in UNC Greensboro. They have a really great recovery program. It's called Spartan Recovery, and they have their own building on campus where they can go. So college is a tough place to be in recovery because people are always going into the parties and the football games and all that stuff. And so he was maybe 24 when I met him, and he was a college senior, so he's like, yeah, they're basically 4 years of my life where I was just out of life. I was in prison or using drugs or whatever. And he said that it was so bad for him. He was like, if selling my mother would have gotten me money, I would have sold my mother. He said, I was just so desperate for the money for my drugs. And he said, ever since he's gotten healthy, he said, ever since I got clean, he said, I've not broken a law. I've not had an impulse to break a law. Like, he said, my entire rap sheet existed entirely to feed his addiction. Right. You know, stealing, because he needed the money. And so, you know, what you're doing for that person, whatever his or her crime was, if you can help them deal with their addiction, the whole community becomes safer. There's a lot less property crime, certainly a lot less drug crime.
That's a big part of our job, is just helping them to learn how to spot and other kind of barriers, you know, as far as, you know, what to look out for. You know, our main thing is we tell them, you know, change people, places, and things, and that's, you know, pretty much back wolf after that. But those two things are a lot harder to change than you realize.
Very hard to do.
Yeah, especially when you spend 10 years, you know, with the same people, and you know, you don't know nothing else.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I think this program was grant funded to train the peer support folks, and I have the name of the grant now. Help me out.
We had, the first grant we got was an Appalachian Regional Commission grant. Called Recovery to Work. And that's where we began the peer support work. And then Beth braided in, our health director braided in the CLC, Community Language Care. So she had Bethany doing the recovery work, and then Clint doing the justice-related peer support. And then Dana will speak about the newest grant because the ARC grant is over. And Commissioner Williams was the person, the driving force to getting the recovery work with ARC.
Thank you for coming out to hear about all the great work that everybody's doing here. Really glad to have you here.
Thank you.
So I'm really just here on behalf of Beth Booth, the health director, because she's at a conference in Asheville. So we're kind of trading places today. I'm based outside of Asheville, but I've had the privilege of coming out here to work with Clinton and Bethany and Beth and Becky and everybody else. I worked with Beth to write the Community Linkage to Care grant several years ago, as well as Stephanie Johnson, the former Clay County health director. So that was one of those cross-county collaborations like you were speaking of. So that's the grant that funded Clinton's position. I can tell you more about the kind of goals and activities of that grant if you'd like. The more recent effort that Beth and I worked on was to write one of those opioid settlement planning grants that you mentioned, the Dogwood funded. I think we were in the first round. And so what that grant is funding is a first phase of a needs assessment that I'm leading with Bethany and Clinton, where what we are doing is actually talking directly with people in Graham County who use drugs or have used drugs, and talking to them about services that they've attempted to access for treatment or recovery, and trying to find out how have those services worked, what did or didn't work, have they tried to access care and not been able to, are there other services that they would like to have that are not currently available, essentially to try and get an idea to inform a second phase, which will be strategic planning, probably with a lot of people that are in this room, and other stakeholders, and also collaboration with the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, to see how should those funds be spent in terms of determining what are the services that would be most helpful for folks. So I have a couple flyers from that needs assessment recruitment that I can pass around so you get a chance to see them. Clinton could speak to how that's been going so far. We're in the early stages of recruitment, so we've got some questionnaires and surveys. We've done one interview so far. As you can imagine, sometimes people are a little shy to speak about their experiences using substances. But we're just really trying to take the time to find out from people who've been directly affected what they need, how it's gone, you know, kind of what they would like to see from services in the county, knowing that when those funds come in, people will be able to make some decisions about how to spend it.
That's great. Are those grants that are with making county by county by county, or is there any of this regional collaboration being seeded by the grant money?
That's a great question, and that's one where probably they would take input. I mean, I found Dogwood to be very open to input. When I saw the request for proposals that Beth shared with me, it was very much county by county, probably because that's how the funding decisions are being made.
Yeah.
But I think anything that would encourage cross-county collaboration would be great. I don't think I would be surprising anyone if I said that some counties are more willing to collaborate than others.
Mhm.
So I think it would depend on the project.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
Yeah, I'm just pass that around. So, everyone can see it. And Bethany's not here today. She's at a training in Wilmington, but she's also doing incredible work on the recovery to work project. So Clinton often, I would say it's almost like Clinton stabilizes people when they're kind of in the immediate post-release or immediate post-arrest phase, and then when they're kind of doing a little better, then Bethany gets them connected to employment services, job training, things like that.
And those are here, or are they in Nashville, or are they, where do people go for that?
The employment part of it?
Yeah.
There's a lot that's here, it really depends. It's like we got Iowa and Andrews, it's slim pickings really, because I mean, you got the carpentry bit, most of the carpenters around here, it's mostly construction work.
Mm-hmm.
And some people that can't leave the state, and a lot of these construction people, they're all time on the road.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes the probation officer will work with some people, depending on what level of risk they are, as far as that goes, and let them work off. But I've gotten to know quite a few of the employers around here that were willing to work with me. So it's, we use Swan County Village, the Manhattan Outdoor Center, Bill Gap, we just kind of have to make a list of everybody and just go around. UNC works a lot too. They're able to place people pretty regular with a lot of the other people. So,
Is your sense that the attitude of employers is different today than 5 years ago?
probably maybe a little. I'd say since people are starting to see more about it, they're kind of more willing to give people a shot, especially if they've got somebody like me or somebody that can tell them that the person's done great, and just kind of advocate for somebody.
Mm-hmm. Great.
So if I could add something to it, I'm Dale Wiggins, I'm one of the county commissioners, and I wrote the narrative and the implementation plan for the recovery work model that we're using. And that came about with a group of people just having a brainstorming session one day. We were made aware of some funding from ARC that we could apply for. And so we brainstormed. I took a mix of everything that everybody said and tried to put it into that. And almost immediately after ARC got our grant application, we started getting positive feedback from it. And we believed the whole time that what we were doing could be a model, at least for any rural county. And since we have implemented our program, Land to Sky Council Region B has implemented a very similar program that ARC funded, and we're glad to see that. Our goal was to take people that were a couple of months sober, help them rebuild their lives from the ground up if necessary. And then we got the program that Clinton works with, which gave us another leg to make contact with those people immediately. And the sheriff's office has been really great to work with us in Clinton and to give us an opportunity to intercede in these people's lives as early as possible, and to get them clean and sober. And myself and the other commissioners even discussed it from an economic viewpoint that we had jobs on top of jobs here even through the pandemic that we couldn't fill, and we see our workforce, at least a portion of it out here, desperate for help, in need, and so we responded to that. And then as these programs were implemented, the Board of Commissioners, we adopted what we call a fair hiring policy here at the county level. My speech is all screwed up in Bell's palsy because of the gift from COVID. So, because we believed that if we were going to do these programs and we wanted the employers in the county to have faith in these people, that we should be willing to show the same faith. And I think it was Jason that mentioned that we've done that, and we've had good success. We're seeing people reunited with their children. Across Western North Carolina, Region A, what is it, about 1,100 kids, Connie, that we've learned that are in foster care across Region A counties.
Yes.
And so we want to make an impact on that. I never met a 10-year-old that said, I want to grow up and be a drug addict. Mm-hmm. And so we're involving as many people in the community as we can. There's a gentleman that's not here today named Mike Team, who operates a program called Celebrate Recovery, a faith-based organization. We work with him. He and his program has made a big impact here in our county. So we're just very grateful for all of it. And so far, the whole experience has been very positive. I mean, we've had a couple of people that have lapsed, and we're still going to have to go back. But we believe that these are somebody's children. They're somebody's mother. They're somebody's father. And from a Christian perspective, I believe it's our duty to not throw these people away, to do what we can to help them. So that's our motivation.
That's wonderful. Thank you. What's going on in the jails? What's your sort of average daily population, and what's the estimate of the number of people who have substance use disorder in the jail, and what kind of services are y'all able to provide?
We're averaging between 20 and 25, I believe, at a time in the jail. Most of those are either drug arrests or property crimes. It's the two types hand in hand. I know Clinton goes to the jail and visits with them up there. They do church services on Sundays in the courtroom for those who attend. The sheriff knows he's not able to be here. He had a meeting with the FBI district attorney in Franklin about a homicide from a couple of years ago. He was working. There's a bit more about it than anything else.
Fixing to start doing the harm reduction too. We need to do like about the Narcan, and little packets made out of Narcan that we need to do about the resources too. That'll start here pretty soon. I'm working on it.
Yeah, the deadliest time, the greatest moment of risk in a person who uses drugs' life is when they leave incarceration. Because they haven't been using in jail, their tolerance level has gone way down, but they go back and use at the same level they had used before they got into jail. And with the fentanyl on the streets, it kills them.
I think that's a good point. It's good that we've got Clinton that's actually making contact with them while they're in jail. Because a lot of these people that are in jail, they're homeless, they don't have anywhere else to go. And the only place they may have to go stay when they get out of jail is their dealer. Mm-hmm. So, and then they're right back in the loop. But, Clinton gets to them while they're in jail or prior to getting out, then he can give them another option instead of falling right back into that cycle.
And people, places, and things. Your dealer wants another customer.
Yeah.
We've been fortunate enough where we keep quite a bit of Narcan and make sure each of our officers got plenty with us. And it's almost every week now we're having to use our own Narcan. I've been sharing with the drug coalition, so I get extra pay on a couple of cases. Mm-hmm. One thing that surprised me was 2 weeks ago we had a training session here from Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, and it was a region-wide training. And I won't mention which county it was. They sent the resource officers, Vic County, Bakersfield, and each resource officer had only been issued one dozen on hand. Before they left, to make sure each one of them had a case. I shared it on everything. We're trying to get the Narcan on this. We get this.
Where would save lives? The one certainty is the person who will never go through treatment and live a life of recovery is the person who's dead. And so job one has to be about keeping people alive so that they have the opportunity to to get healthy again.
And our jail, by the way, was only built to hold, what was our maximum, 10 or 12? 8
Males, 0 females.
So all the rest of those are in another county.
So you're having to house
We're
people.
at the house in other counties and on Cortez, vehicles back and forth transport. So it's kind of overwhelming us at times.
And that can be one place where pre-arrest diversion can be helpful, because to the extent you can connect somebody with treatment, that's somebody you're not having to pay to jail every day.
We had an effort underway to get a drug court established here in the 30th Judicial District prior to COVID. Of course, that delayed and pushed several things back, but I'm hopeful that we'll get back on that and get that established, and create a path for these people to not have to walk around the rest of their lives with a felony charge on them for making one really stupid decision. And so I think that's important going forward, that along with everything else, that they have an opportunity, if they get in trouble, to clean that slate.
I mean, that's a perfect example of a strategy where cross-county collaboration could help. Because if every county in that prosecutorial district would chip in whatever it would take for the DA and judges to put together a treatment court, then it's just a sliver on everybody's hide instead of one county carrying the whole weight.
Well, around here, a lot of young kids are, we all like the outdoors growing up. We like to hunt, we like to fish. If you're 18, 19-year-old boy and you get a felony conviction, guess what? You're not going to deer hunt with your dad anymore.
Or if you do, and then you get caught, and then you're in a worse spot than you were.
Yeah.
And it just spirals.
Yeah. So they shouldn't have to live all their life with that. If they get, we want these people to be held accountable. Don't misunderstand me. You make mistakes, you have to be held accountable for that. But again, it shouldn't be a lifelong accountability for one mistake. If they straighten their lives up, they may stay out of trouble beyond that point.
We have another, more than one faith-based organization that helps out with this also in the county. One place that we haven't mentioned is Grace Place. And they, we had a meeting with several of their people, along with Celebrate Recovery, one of the other, the Methodist Church, Eric, the pastor there. They were all here, and the discussion went to feasibility planning and that sort of thing. So that's been probably a month to 6 weeks ago. Help me out, just a little bit, Jason. So I'm thinking they're well into that process, and certainly it was a very positive meeting, I felt, and we had the right stakeholders here to speak with, talk with.
That's great. Yeah, the agreement requires that the strategies be evidence-based for dealing with people's illness. And there's some addictions, methamphetamines, cocaine, for which there isn't medication. Like there's not, you just have to use 12-step or whatever, whatever you need to get so that you're no longer dependent on the substance. But with opioid use disorder, the one, if there's any good thing about it, is that it responds to medication. And there's buprenorphine, there's methadone, there's naltrexone, there are different types of medications that help. And so what we very much want to see is the treatment facilities that are going to serve populations that are funded by counties to use evidence-based methodologies. And there's no question that the recommended practice by addiction doctors is medication-assisted treatment for opioid use disorder.
Many of our victims who are on the streets here, they're hungry because that's not what they spend any resources they get their hands on for. So the Grace Place is one place in this town where they can go every day, any day, and get a meal.
That's
No
fantastic.
questions asked.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it takes every kind of initiative and partnership and collaboration. Like, there's just not going to be there. We all wish there was a light switch. We just let them make this whole problem go away. But it has been 20, 25 years in the making. It is incredibly deep-seated. And I wish that the resources that we won for y'all were enough, that I could say, it's gone, we're gonna fix it. Even $26 billion is enough. It's gonna help, and there will be people who are healthy as a result, and there will be people who are alive, and we just wanna maximize the number of people who get the value of the work. I can tell that you all are definitely on the right path with the strategies you're using and resources you're grabbing wherever you can find them, and the people you're hiring to make a difference. It's very encouraging.
Clinton, I'd like to ask you a question. Did you notice any difference in the hiring practices once the county decided to model the behavior of second chance?
Oh, yeah, definitely got. I mean, people started giving people a shot. And it definitely made a difference.
I think it's a great signal. We did a similar thing in the Department of Justice, where we changed our hiring policies to make it so that people have to disclose their past with criminal justice, but it's at the back end of the process instead of the front end, so that they at least have a chance to impress along the way and build advocates for their candidacy. Anybody have anything else?
I just have one thing. You talked all about the adult diversion program, but what about the juvenile justice? Because this is my second year working at the sheriff's office. Local investigations. I have a hand in property crimes as well as the drug end of it. But a statement was made, I can't remember who made it. Somebody said that they never heard the 10-year-olds say they want to grow up and do drugs. I've heard that many times. Prior to starting here, I was SRO at our schools for nearly 20 years. The first meth labs first came here and got big were the full-blown meth labs. I had a kid sit down and tell me how to make meth from beginning to end. He said, "This is what I'm going to do whenever I grow up. This is easy money. This is how I'm going to make my money." And he told me step for step for step. And at the time, I had no clue about how to make meth. I didn't know how to make meth. So he was like telling me this. So I go call up the sheriff's office, drug guys. I'm like, let me just run something by you guys. Wow. So I just laid it all out for him. I was like, oh my God, where's this at? And so passed the information on. A short time later, search warrants done. Full-blown meth labs found. How to grow pot inside a basement. I've been given the ABCs of how to do that by 5th grade. The other one was a 4th grader that told me how to make meth. And I could go on and on and on about the stories that I've heard, but probably different than my situation, different than a lot of people think. The biggest part of my career was working with kids, and young kids in particular, K-6. My thing is if we can get them when they're young. Because by the time they get to the adult stage, either one, yeah, they can recover, they can turn things around, they can make their life, everything's meant to be, but they're starting to learn those behaviors when they're young. And it's a vicious cycle that anybody that's dealt with these folks, and I know Clint's seen it, and the other guys in here have seen it. Once they become adults and they have their own kids, that kid's getting trained in the very same cycle that they come up in, and that's the lifestyle that they're being taught. So what can we do to catch them a little bit earlier? Clint's doing an amazing job
with the diversion program down there. You know, we talk from time to time, he's doing a great job with it. We need to get them younger.
Yeah, part
That's
of
just
it-
my opinion. That's just
I agree with you. There's no question. I mean, there's I'm sure you all heard about this, the ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, where depending on the number of experiences that are rough that a kid has, each one you add increases the likelihood that they'll have either problems with the criminal justice system or employment, you know, all the things. It's intuitively obvious. You know, a kid who's raised in a really tough home has all the cards stacked against them. And so, you know, one thing you do by doing what Clinton's doing is if you can get to the parents so they get healthy and the kids are still young enough. I was just in Lumberton in Robinson County end of last week. Yeah, end of last week. And there was a remarkable woman who spoke who she had, I think it was 14 years of active addiction. She had one child, gave it over to her mom. Fortunately, her mom was there and able to take the child, didn't end up in foster care. And then 10 years later, gets pregnant again. She's like, I don't want this kid. And then, so I'm gonna give it to my mom again. And then it was like the second that happened, she had that aha moment where she realized that was not what she wanted, that she wanted to be able to raise her child, but she knew she couldn't raise her child. So that was the spark that led her to a life of recovery, which she's now lived for about 12 years. So that boy is 12, the daughter was like, I don't remember which was, she was a teenager. But that cycle has been broken with those two children. The children were there, the grandma was there, she was there, they're all there. And it was just, you could feel the love that they all had for each other. And so, you know, we can't give up on adults. And if we can't break the cycle with adults, then there's very little hope for the kids. I agree with you. It's tough. And, you know, kids have to have a feeling of belief that there's some positive life prospect for them, like going to school, pain in the butt. But, you know, if I do it, I can get a job, I can afford a house, I can get married. And I doubt we're seeing that up here like what we're seeing in Durham and Raleigh. I mean, just the teen shootings breaks your heart. You see these shootings that are happening, you know, after a party or in a car, and they're always 16, 18, 21 years old. That's who's shooting everybody. And so we got to find ways to productively engage children so that they're not looking to break into somebody's car and steal their gun and then run around with it, but instead they're like, I'm going to go to summer camp. I'm going to go to play YMCA basketball, Boys and Girls Club basketball this summer. You know? So we can't ever give up on kids. We have to work with parents.
You know, I think too, you know, Clint, he talked a little bit about this, he made mention of it, was when these folks go to get help, through mental health, and I know mental health's at the forefront of a lot of talks as far as this goes, but mental health, and when you talk about the counties of Cherokee, Clay, Graham, Swain, these far west counties, we got to send our folks a long ways. And, you know, he mentioned, I think it was 3 places that he mentioned, just right in the road, as Haywood, I think it's Haywood and Buncombe, if I'm not mistaken.
Haywood and Buncombe.
Yeah, and that's a chore for folks out
That's
there.
all. And these are people who don't have money for cars, they can't take time off the job.
Right, and, you know, when you got people that's, you know, struggling, as it is, and then you got to travel an hour and a half, 2 hours, or what have you.
Well,
If there was a place dead center in the middle of these far west
A
places.
couple months ago, I was in Asheville at the community college, AB Tech, and there, forget the name of the nonprofit, something Appalachia something, you will know who I'm talking about. But they just rolled out a mobile treatment facility. And what it means is there's somebody who has a van and an iPad, and they drive to the people's homes, wherever they are, you know, it could be an hour away from Asheville, easy, and they just do the follow-up visit. They put the person on the iPad, the doctor is in Asheville, And the doctor said, well, how are you doing this week? What have been your issues? Did you have any troubles? Tell me how was work? How was this? Okay, great. Here's a prescription for your next round of buprenorphine so that you can then have your medication-assisted therapy to help you go to the next month's appointment. And so we have to be creative and meet people where they are, recognizing that if we expect, first of all, we all have trouble when there are barriers in our lives, right? If something's a pain, it goes to the bottom of the list. It just does, because we all have too much going on. Imagine if our coping mechanisms were that of somebody who's been addicted for 10 years. Like, talk about throwing your towel out. You just give up at the first, oh man, that's too hard, I'm not doing that. Because you just don't have those coping skills. And so we have to make it as easy as possible for those people to get the help that they need. So I think telemedicine really creates powerful opportunities. I led a national effort of attorneys general to write the Trump administration and the Biden administration, and both of them agreed. There aren't many things they both agreed on. But there were limits on how many patients doctors could see and prescribe buprenorphine. There's no other rule like that that limits a doctor's ability to treat people. It's just crazy. And so a bipartisan group of AGs urged Congress to change the law and for CMS, the federal agency, to change the regulation. Because we've got to be creative to help people in rural areas. It's just too hard for them to get the care they need. I agree.
That's a very critical and sobering thought, Mr. Knight. I believe your wife is the school superintendent, Angie. I was at a school function, it's been a couple of years, pre-COVID now, and pre-K through the 6th grade were involved in this program in the gymnasium. And I was so concerned at how disheveled and tired so many of the children appear to be. So I went to Mrs. Knight, Superintendent Knight, and I said, what's going on? And she let me know that from pre-K through that 6th grade, many days, the only thing that they can do for the children is let them rest, because they have had probably neither food nor rest since they were to school the day before. If they get to the early childhood, even to the pre-K, until we can make connections and progress with more parents. So indeed, those are many of our people who are just out there being falling by the wayside. We have a wonderful DSS and the health department here. They can't find them all. They can't handle them all. And so it's a problem everywhere, but it is heartbreaking. It will take your heart right out of you.
I mean, 1 in 5 children in North Carolina don't get enough food to eat, and I guarantee you it's higher in this county than it is statewide. And how are you supposed to sit in your desk and learn when your stomach's rumbling and your mind's wandering? And so things like making sure you have free and reduced lunch available for all students is really important. And there are studies that show that when you make free and reduced lunch available to all students and not means tested, then kids are much more likely to eat because they don't feel like I'm the poor kid, And so we got our work cut out for us. We got our work cut out for us. We're going to have a lot of stuff to do for the years to come. And my hope is that these resources are just a boost to the incredible and important things that you all are already doing, that you entrepreneurially come up with ways to do. And anything that we can do at the Department of Justice to help you, I hope you reach out to us and let us know. And if there are any ideas that we need to take to the rest of the state, let us know. Becky knows Steve Mange, my colleague, my policy director. He lives and breathes this stuff. So we're happy to do whatever we can do to help.
You're probably familiar with Southwestern Child Development, headquartered out of Webster, North Carolina. Had a meeting with them yesterday. And they are very concerned, and they do have some ARPA funding right now, which we're so grateful for, looking at some early childhood education, even to that level. And we're talking 2 and 3 year olds.
We have to. I mean,
We do.
we've talked about, these adverse childhood experiences that, there are so many kids who start kindergarten and their parents never read to them.
No.
Whereas there are other kids who come in, parents read to them almost every night. And so right there, you have one child who's used to the idea of books and literacy, and they have a huge vocabulary for a 5 or 6 year old. And the other kid has a vocabulary of 400 or 500 words. And already they're starting way behind the line. There's some hope on this stuff. There was a committee called the Hunt-Lee Committee that was chaired by a Republican and Democrat, both of them named Lee. Michael Lee from Wilmington, he's a Republican state senator, and Howard Lee, a former state senator, Democrat. And one of the recommendations, they said, look, there's so many things in education we don't agree on. Let's find 10 things we do agree on. And having strong early childhood education programs was something it's just not a partisan issue. It's like, do you want kids to have a chance or do you not?